The loss of a child is always devastating, but it becomes even more horrifying when the child is cruelly murdered. This was the tragic case of 11-week-old Parker Bose, whose life was taken by his own father. The scene is set at Gibson County Courthouse, where Judge Robert Sigg is preparing to announce the final judgment for Quinn Bose, a father guilty of a heinous act. However, an unexpected act of vengeance would soon occur in the courtroom. Life in a quiet Indiana town seemed peaceful until May 2018, when tragedy struck. Parker Bose was discovered lifeless, his small body showing signs of severe blunt force trauma to the head. One might imagine the perpetrator to be a shadowy figure hiding in the night, but the truth was far more disturbing. The culprit was Parker's own father. As investigators pieced together the events leading to Parker's death, the evidence revealed that Quinn had attacked his son. Despite Quinn's claims that the injuries were accidental, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, facing up to 40 years behind bars. The case took an unexpected turn when Quinn's trial was canceled after he entered a plea agreement. In exchange for dropping the first-degree murder charge, he pleaded guilty to a level 2 felony, domestic battery causing death. This agreement drastically reduced his potential sentence. The judge ultimately sentenced Quinn Bose to 25 years, with 19 years to be served in prison and 6 years on probation. As Quinn was escorted from the courtroom to begin his sentence, Parker's uncle, Jeremiah Hartley, known as Matt, was overwhelmed by a surge of grief and anger. In a moment of raw emotion, Matt lunged at Quinn, attacking him in front of everyone. This act of unrestrained fury led to Matt being charged with battery and sentenced to 179 days in jail for contempt of court. The gavel fell in Wayne County Circuit Court, marking the final judgment for Jasmine Gordon and Clifford Thomas. This case had deeply shaken the community, and just as the duo received their sentencing, the solemn atmosphere of the courtroom was interrupted by an unexpected turn of events. The grieving father of the 3-year-old victim had his own way of expressing his anguish. The relationship between Jasmine, her boyfriend Clifford, and little Jamila Smith was intricate. Jasmine and Clifford were responsible for Jamila's safety and well-being. However, everything changed on September 18, 2014, when Jamila was rushed to the hospital in an unresponsive state. When emergency medical technicians questioned Jasmine about the circumstances, the forensic pathologist revealed a heartbreaking reality. Jamila had suffered from numerous injuries, including internal bleeding, a torn pancreas, and other signs of abuse. Her death was ruled a homicide, and Jasmine and Clifford were soon taken into custody. Throughout the trial, emotions ran high, especially during testimonies from medical experts who treated Jamila. They described a child who had endured over 50 injuries at various stages of healing, clear evidence of sustained abuse. The medical examiner emphasized that these injuries could not have been self-inflicted. Jasmine Gordon remained emotionless throughout the trial, her cold demeanor contrasting sharply with the horrific nature of the crime. Not even the judge's harsh criticism seemed to faze her.
Oh, but Miss Gordon, you're an even better actor, because on your interview, you pretended like you did not know that your child was being abused, either by you or the man that sat at home all day with your child while you worked and he did not.
As the proceedings continued, Jamila's father, Dwayne Smith, could no longer contain his grief and anger. In a sudden outburst, he struck Clifford Thomas, landing a blow to his jaw, which triggered a scuffle. Court deputies quickly intervened, separating the men. In the aftermath, the judge chose not to hold Dwayne in contempt, and Clifford declined to press charges against him. Judge Margaret Van Houten delivered the final sentences. Jasmine Gordon received 7 to 15 years for involuntary manslaughter and an additional 14 to 25 years for first-degree child abuse. Clifford Thomas was sentenced to 6 to 15 years for involuntary manslaughter and 1 to 2 years for resisting and obstructing law enforcement. Merritt County Superior Court, 18-year-old Devon, Maine, was about to find out that being in the courtroom wouldn't protect him from the swift hands of justice. Charged with the murder of 9-month-old Darius King Grigsby in a senseless drive-by shooting, Maine's not guilty plea did little to prevent the unexpected turn of events. The assailant was someone no one would have expected to seek justice. On November 9, 2022, 9-month-old Darius King Grigsby became an innocent victim caught in a drive-by shooting in Merritt, which would tragically claim his life. The accused, Devon, Maine, just 18 years old, was charged with the murder of this innocent child. When he was arrested, Maine initially denied his involvement in the shooting, but later confessed. His admission suggested that others may have been involved, but he refused to identify them. According to the police, the real target was a man walking with the toddler's mother. However, Maine shocked everyone by pleading not guilty to the charges of murder and attempted murder. As he stood before the judge, a sudden and unforeseen act of violence unfolded. James McCrae, an inmate with his own criminal charges for a separate crime, broke the court's order and attacked Maine, shocking everyone in the courtroom and the community. Many applauded McCrae's actions, perhaps understanding the pain of losing a young life, but it did not alter Maine's plea. Maine is currently being held at the county jail, and his sentencing has not yet concluded. Our next case takes place in the Clark County Superior Court, where Ryan Burge, a man once trusted with caring for a young child, found himself at the center of a courtroom drama. Convicted of second-degree murder and manslaughter, Burge was about to face the fury of a grieving family and a society struggling to comprehend the senseless tragedy. This is the story of Hartley Anderson, a beautiful 5-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her, and Ryan Burge, the man who was supposed to care for her but ended up causing her untimely death. Ryan Burge, 37 years old, was the boyfriend of Hartley's mother. On November 2, 2018, he was responsible for looking after Hartley while her mother worked and her siblings were at school. Burge and Hartley followed their routine that day, including a trip to the grocery store. Burge claimed that after returning home from school, Hartley threw a temper tantrum, and he sent her to her room. He said she began to bang her head against the wall repeatedly. Emergency services were called, and when they arrived, Hartley was found unconscious with severe head trauma. Despite efforts by medical staff, Hartley passed away from her injuries, which included a stroke and massive brain swelling. The neurosurgeon who treated Hartley confirmed that her injuries were so severe they could not have been self-inflicted. The prosecution argued that Burge had brutally attacked Hartley in a fit of rage. During the trial, Hartley's father, Peter Anderson, tried to attack Burge in the courtroom but was stopped before reaching him. Ultimately, Burge was convicted of second-degree murder and manslaughter. Judge Jennifer Snyder sentenced him to 40 years in prison, emphasizing the cruelty of the attack on Hartley.
She broke both of my daughter's femurs. She slashed from the inside out. She broke every bone in my daughter's face. Every tooth in the front of her face was gone. Her chin was split wide open. Her eyes was bulging out of her head.
In our final case, we shift to the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court, where Lithia Tidmore, a 25-year-old from Garfield Heights, found herself at the center of a legal storm following a hit-and-run accident that resulted in the death of a 9-year-old girl named Desire May. Although Tidmore wasn't physically confronted by the victim's parents, she was about to witness a shocking confrontation. This tragic incident occurred on a November morning in 2017 in Euclid, where 9-year-old Desire May was heading to the bus stop for school. As Desire crossed Babbitt Road, she was struck by a vehicle driven by Tidmore. Instead of stopping to help, Tidmore fled the scene, leaving Desire injured on the street. Realizing the severity of her actions, Tidmore eventually turned herself in. She was charged with aggravated vehicular homicide and failure to stop after an accident. Tidmore's defense claimed that she didn't realize she had hit a child, but the court found her guilty after she pled to third-degree felony charges. During the sentencing, the mother of the victim had strong words for Tidmore.
She broke both of my daughter's femurs. She slashed from the inside out. She broke every bone in my daughter's face. Every tooth in the front of her face was gone. Her chin was split wide open. Her eyes was bulging out of her head.
Judge Peter J. Corgan sentenced Tidmore to the maximum 8 years in prison, along with 3 years of mandatory post-release control. Her driver's license was also permanently revoked. Each of these courtroom incidents underscores the deep anguish caused by the loss of a child, and no punishment can ever fully erase that pain.